Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
And welcome into the show. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers, and I'm truly blessed and excited to have everybody here for the first ever episode of Move the Chains. We've got wall-to-wall NFL action here today, ladies and gentlemen, and the Atlanta Falcons think that they hit the lottery when it came to free agency and signing their quarterback for the next 4 years. I think they did hit the lottery to a certain extent, but I still don't think it made them a contender. I'll get into that in more detail. And also, I think there's a formula that NFL teams have not yet figured out when it comes to the NFL draft. But there is one team who's figured it out, and they've definitely reaped the benefits. And I also get into nonsense narratives. Opportunities are created by individuals that aren't necessarily true. We're going to talk about all that today here on Move the Chains. But Ernest, let's go ahead and get it started with First Down. So if you're the Atlanta Falcons, as an organization, as a coaching staff, as a fan base, you're probably very excited to see what's right here to my left. Kirk Cousins. Now, first let me say this. I want to take my hat off to Kirk Cousins and his agent for the amount of money that he's been able to earn as an NFL quarterback. Not only the amount of money, the amount of guaranteed money. He just inked a 4-year, $180 million contract with the Atlanta Falcons. $50 million he got at signing bonus time, and $100 million of that $180 is guaranteed. So congratulations to Kirk Cousins for understanding that this is a business and he's able to take care of his family for generations to come. But if you look at the lower third right there, it said the Atlanta Falcons got fleeced. And I'm going to tell you why I feel that way. I don't feel that way because I don't think that they didn't upgrade at the position. Because at any position in the NFL, what's the goal? To get better. And if you look at the quarterbacks the Falcons have had over the past few seasons, the Taylor Heinekes of the world and Desmond Ridder, I'll say those names again. If you're a Falcons fan, you may want to cover your ears because I know this may make you shed some tears. Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder were under center for you. So it's not a surprise on why the Falcons have not reached the playoffs in the last 6 seasons, let alone not reaching the playoffs. They haven't even had a winning record because they've had less than adequate play at the quarterback position. So when you go out and sign Kirk Cousins, yes, you've upgraded. But let me tell you a little bit about Kirk Cousins when it comes to being an NFL quarterback. Kirk Cousins has been in the league for 12 years, was drafted in the 4th round in 2012. And over his career, he's put up some pretty good numbers. There was a time where Kirk Cousins, everybody talked about him not being able to win in prime time and all that type of stuff. Remember, wins and losses are a quarterback stat, but teams have a lot to do with it. So I don't take all the stock that some people do into that one stat, but it's indicative of how he's performed. So as a starter for 12 years in this league, Kirk Cousins has played in a total of 5 playoff games and won 1. 1 in 4 in the playoffs as a starter. Not only is he 1 in 4, in those 5 starts in the playoffs, he's thrown a total of 5 touchdown passes. 5 touchdown passes in 5 starts in the playoffs. So while you've upgraded at the position, does this mean that you're now a contender in the NFC South and the NFC and even in the NFL to try to win a Super Bowl? I don't think it is. And the reason you were able to bring in Kirk Cousins for that extraordinary amount of money is because you have a viable litany of weapons offensively that are still under rookie contracts. Ernest, let me see that graphic. Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London. 3 individuals that are still under their rookie contracts for the Atlanta Falcons. And they've all inked 4-year deals. If you're asking yourself, why is it so important or why is it so relevant that they all are on 4-year deals? Well, it's because after their 4th year, they become unrestricted free agents, and the Falcons are going to have to decide on whether or not they want to pick up their 5th-year option. The Falcons were able to pay Kirk Cousins all that money because they have these thoroughbreds on the offensive side of the football, basically underpaid. And what I mean by underpaid is they're in their rookie deal. But when their 5th-year option comes up, if the Falcons decide to extend it, these guys are going to want more money. And if the Falcons aren't able to pay them more money, they're going to test the open market and try to get money via free agency somewhere else, which is exactly what they're supposed to do. But my point is, you've got a 3 to 4 year window with Kirk Cousins as your quarterback. And not only has he only won 1 playoff game in his career, he's also coming off a season-ending Achilles injury to where he missed the majority of the 2023 season. Now, if you want to tell me, hey, Jonathan, I think Atlanta's going to be great. I think they're going to win the NFC South because Kirk Cousins has a litany of weapons. These guys, they're going to be able to throw the ball down the field. They're going to be able to run the ball with Algiers and Bijan Robinson. Kyle Pitts is going to be able to stretch the field, even from the tight end position. Drake London is a matchup nightmare. I agree with all of that stuff. But what I'm telling you is, how would that be any different from what Kirk Cousins already had in Minnesota? He had Justin Jefferson. For my money, is one of the top 2 receivers in the entire league right now. He also had Adam Thielen when he was in his prime before he went to Carolina. He also had Dalvin Cook, who was in his prime at the running back spot. He also had T.J. Hawkinson. And by the way, he also had Kevin O'Connell, head coach, calling the offensive plays. Kirk Cousins was not void of talent. He was not void of a scheme. And offensively, they produced pretty well in Minnesota. But the problem was they never got over the hump. And if you're telling me now that Kirk Cousins is the quarterback to get the Atlanta Falcons over the hump, my question to you is, well, where's your proof? Where's the precedent that's been set? He's been a good quarterback, but he hasn't been a great quarterback. He hasn't been elite. Nowhere near an MVP conversation. Couple of Pro Bowls, but Kirk Cousins is above average. And while he's been an upgrade at the position, I still don't think it makes the Atlanta Falcons a viable contender in the NFC. You're just going to have to show me better than you can tell me. All right, coming up after the break, the NFL draft is very important. And I think there's one team that's cracked the code on how to move forward and use their draft picks and get championships out of them. We'll be back when we'll move the chains right after this. And welcome back in to Move the Chains. I want to thank everybody again for tuning into the show today. So I told you before we went to the break that there's a formula that I think one NFL team has really figured out and some are still struggling to figure out. And I'm going to dive into it right now. Ernest, let's run it. It's time for second down. You should be used to this by now. The Kansas City logo and a Lombardi trophy. They seem to be synonymous with one another, and I think that's what happens when you win, 3 Super Bowls in the past 5 seasons, and you win back-to-back Super Bowls, and you've got a 3-time Super Bowl MVP at quarterback and a 2-time league MVP at quarterback, and you've got one of the greatest tight ends of all time, and you've got a defensive player in Chris Jones who's one of the best interior linemen in the game, and he just got signed to a massive contract. So I just talked about Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones, right? And I think they're relevant for this reason. The NFL draft plus the development equals success. I don't think there's any team that's done it in the NFL in the past 6 or 7 seasons than the Kansas City Chiefs. And listen, we could go to a multitude of draft classes for the Chiefs, and we could understand why they've been so successful, but I want to really hone in on the 2022 NFL draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. And not only do I want to hone in on, I want to talk about the impact that these players have had. So let's go ahead and kick it off with Trent McDuffie, their starting corner. Now, the Chiefs just lost L'Jarius Sneed, who in my opinion was the best corner in football. They lost him via trade to the Tennessee Titans. But Trent McDuffie, as a rookie 2 years ago, was phenomenal. Started, got a lot of snaps, and helped the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. And all he did in his second year, when a lot of players go into a sophomore slump, all he did was become a first-team All-Pro. And for those of you that don't know what that means that he was one of the best 11 defensive players in the entire league last season. George Karlaftis at defensive end went at the end of the first round. Predominant edge rusher for the Kansas City Chiefs that able to get pressure on the quarterback. I look at guys like Sky Moore and Brian Cook. Sky Moore caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl versus the Philadelphia Eagles 2 years ago. Brian Cook has been a solidified safety for the Kansas City Chiefs. Leo Chanel, when Nick Bolton got hurt and Drew Tranquill and Leo Chanel had to step in with Willie Gay also being injured, they didn't miss a beat. And lastly, you can't forget about a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, who was a 7th-round pick out of Rutgers and just took over the starting spot at running back for the Kansas City Chiefs over Clyde Edwards-Helaire and has now become one of the best and hardest runners in the NFL. So when you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you understand that drafting and developing is the most important part of building an NFL roster, it's because when you're paying your quarterback the inordinate amount of money they're paying Patrick Mahomes, they have to get production from their younger players that are under their rookie deals, and that's exactly what they've done. And the biggest reason that they had to get production from their rookie deals was because of this man, Tyreek Hill, a.k.a. the Cheetah. And you see here in the Pro Bowl where he's throwing up the deuces signs, but what is that jersey that he's wearing? Oh, that's a Miami Dolphins jersey. Now, why is that so important? Because the Chiefs had to get rid of Tyreek Hill. They traded Tyreek Hill in 2022 because as one of the best receivers in football, he wanted his money. And I can't disagree with Tyreek Hill. He was owed his money. Not only is he one of the fastest players in the NFL, he's one of the best receivers and best players, period. But the Chiefs had a decision to make. We keep Tyreek Hill, pay him a large amount of money, and we're not able to spread the money around to make our defense better, which was a top 5 defense last year. More importantly, they were a top 2 defense or scoring defense, only behind the Baltimore Ravens. Or we can have Tyreek Hill keep the bag here in Kansas City and see if we can run it back. They said, no, we got to let him go. So not only were they able to let him go and get great draft picks, only thing they've done since they've let Tyreek Hill go, ladies and gentlemen, is won back-to-back Super Bowls. And the reason they're able to do things like that is because they have organizational structure and a culture in place. And that starts at the top from ownership to the general manager, but also this gentleman here in Andy Reid. And remember, Andy Reid couldn't get over the hump in Philadelphia. But I think him losing all those NFC championship games and losing that one Super Bowl he went to in Philadelphia helped him prepare to lead this organization. And it doesn't hurt when you get a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who is a bona fide leader. Anything you want to compare any quarterback ever to, who's the best arm, who has the most scrambling ability, who has the greatest acumen, who has the greatest leadership skills, you can attribute to Patrick Mahomes. So the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion, have been the one team that has cracked the code of the NFL draft. It is not just drafting high, it is drafting and developing. And because of that, the Chiefs have been able to win 3 championships in the most recent history, and they are now currently a dynasty in the NFL. All right, ladies and gentlemen, coming up after the break, my nonsense narrative segments. You don't want to miss it, because if you hate it, I probably love it. We'll be back with more Move the Chains right after this. And welcome back in to Move the Chains, everybody. You know, when I was putting the show together and I was having some creative talks with a focus group and just kind of getting some ideas, the one thing people always hear me complain about are narratives that people create that just aren't true. And I think people do it on purpose just so they can have something to argue. But I'm not here for clicks. I'm not here for clickbait. I'm here for substance. So that birthed this next segment. Let's go ahead and run it. It's time for Nonsense Narrative. Now, I'm here with this shot because I want you to look directly into my eyes and understand how angry this topic makes me. At every position in the NFL, everybody uses the word competition as they should. When it comes to running backs, well, we're going to have a running back competition. When it comes to wide receivers, we're going to have a wide receiver competition. Our linebackers, we've got to have a linebacker competition and see who's the best individual that gives us the best opportunity to win football games. All that's right. But why is it when it comes to the most important position on the field, quarterbacks don't have a competition, there's a controversy? Now, I want you to realize why this is such a nonsense narrative, because I don't care if I have 2 phenomenal quarterbacks on my roster. That's what I want. And if one of my quarterbacks is not strong enough mentally to handle the pressure of having somebody push him for the job, is he the quarterback I want on my team? And I want to show you why having competition at the quarterback position and competent quarterback play is so important. I want you to take a look at something right here, ladies and gentlemen. This is a list of quarterbacks who were going into the season last year as a starter who missed significant time due to injury. Joe Burrow, who, hey, listen, I think Joe Burrow is phenomenal, but I think they need to pump the brakes a little bit about calling him elite. He's been to an AFC championship game, absolutely, and he's been to a Super Bowl that he ended up losing. He and his team lost to the Rams. But other than that, the only thing you can say about Joe Burrow is that he's been hurt. Okay? I love Joe Burrow, but he hasn't been on the field. And half of the seasons he's been in the NFL, he's missed extended time and had season-ending injuries. That means something. Deshaun Watson, we understand the off-field issues for Deshaun Watson, but he also hasn't been healthy, and he's looked like a shell of himself since he joined the Cleveland Browns after being one of the best quarterbacks in the league with Houston. Justin Herbert had finger injury, has been getting beat up his entire career, and I think he's underachieved based on what people say his talent is. I like Justin Herbert, but if you look at Anthony Richardson for the Colts, rookie quarterback, didn't survive the season, barely survived the first half of the season. And Kirk Cousins, we talked about in the opening segment. Aaron Rodgers, who played literally 4 plays for the New York Jets before he went down. Daniel Jones, who led his team to the playoffs a year ago, and the Giants were completely terrible. And Kyler Murray, who's been hurt on and off for the past 2 or 3 seasons. But this is what I want to say about the quarterback position. I just gave you 8 teams that lost their quarterback to significant time or season-ending injuries in the 2023 season. That's 1/4 of the NFL. 1/4 of the league lost their quarterbacks. So you mean to tell me that it doesn't matter if you don't have a top-level backup? And this is the kickback I'm going to get. This is the pushback. Well, Bam, I understand what you're saying, but you got to think about the cap space. You got to think about the salary cap. You got to think about the collective bargaining agreement with the NFL and the NFLPA. You can't pay 2 quarterbacks. Why can't you? And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. In 2012, when the Washington franchise drafted RG3 in the first round and then drafted Kirk Cousins in the 4th round, I thought it was a genius move. I thought it was the only thing Daniel Snyder has ever done as owner in the NFL that was worth anything. Because when RG3 got hurt and got hit in his leg when he was running the football, you had Kirk Cousins. Now, it didn't lead to a Super Bowl, but you had competent quarterback play, and you also had young quarterback play. So what's wrong with having 2 quarterbacks under rookie contracts? You have them battle it out, and in 2 years, you should know who your quarterback is. And then what you can do is get what? Great draft capital for the other guy who's been learning, who's been practicing, who is still young, and you can use that to draft or use those picks to turn something over when it comes to a trade. So the notion that quarterback controversies exist in the NFL is ludicrous to me. I'm tired of hearing it. The quarterback position, like any other position, needs competition because you need to determine who the best man is for the job. And if it's the highest level in the NFL, if it's the guy who touches the ball 100% of the time, if it's the individual that's going to lead you to the promised land, don't tell me that a backup is going to do it. Because I've seen Nick Foles do it. I've seen Jeff Hostetler do it, but I haven't seen many more. All right, coming up after the break, it's the final drive. You're going to be back with more Move the Chains right after this. And welcome back into Move the Chains. I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers, and this is going towards the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen, so it's time for my final thoughts, which means it's time for the final drive. The NFL says that they are concerned about player safety. I believe them to a certain extent. But I will remind everybody this. When you make a game that is inherently dangerous and you try to take the danger out of the game, what you ended up doing is weakening the product. So with all these new rule changes, when it comes to the kickoff, when it comes to the hip drop tackle that is now illegal, whereas now you can't hit anybody below their knees or what have you, you're going to completely take the physicality out of football. It's warranted. You want people to be safe, but you have to put a product on the field that people want to watch. This is your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers. God bless you, and I can't wait to see you next time on Move the Chains.